Alright, and welcome back. So, today we will be talking about 10 opening principles that every beginner or every chess player should or must know. And let's start right away. So, the first principle is always fight for the central squares. So, as you can see on the board, there are 64 squares on the chessboard. However, the four squares that I have marked in green, e4, e5, d4 and d5, are the most important. If you ask me why, because they are the most centralized, they are in the center of the board. Now that you know that they are important, you should know that it is also very important to fight for these squares. And a player who has better control over these four squares will usually have an advantage, which will lead to a winning position. So you should always keep in mind to keep control of the center. All right, the second principle that we always kind of mismanage is to develop your pieces, right? The development of your pieces is one of the most important things in the opening, and since it is necessary to develop your pieces, uh, it should always be like not on their original squares but developed or placed somewhere where it controls the center during the game. So when you have developed all your pieces, the opening is over and then you are ready for the middle game. So as you can see, the white pieces, right, the knight on f3 is developed. It controls two good major central squares. The bishop on c4 controls the d5 central square, and it also has its eyes on that diagonal. The knight on c3 is centralized, and also the bishop is not at its original square, but it has developed. So yeah, all of these things, like for example fighting for the central squares and developing your pieces, make a lot of sense. Also, if you just take into account black's knights, both these knights are well placed. The bishop is developed. The queen is pretty much kind of centralized or looking towards the center. Probably bishop d7 now would make a lot of sense. All right. So now this thing, principle number 3, we call it as take your king away from the center. So the best way to move your king away from the center is with castling. Since with this, your king will be protected by your pawns and you will feel much more comfortable. So this must be done so that not to receive any dangerous attacks from your opponent. If you don't want this, then do it before the first 10 moves. If you do not want any dangerous attack to be received from your opponent, probably the best way is to do it in the first 10 moves. So two types of castlings are possible, or two types of castlings are good. uh, you just have to know that although short castling over here is safer, 0-0 is safer, long castling can provide you with more possibilities to attack. So you can either castle short like king going to g1 and rook jumping over to f1. You can also castle long like the king going to c1 and rook going to d1. Always remember, if you castle long, it might lead to more interesting positions. So it's like 90% of the times it's always safe to castle short. Alright, so let's take a look at an example game. So I'm going to show you, or I'm going to take the opening of one of my games as an example in which I apply the three principles that I have shown you so far. So let's say e4 is what happened, because not only does it control the e4 central square, but it also controls the d5 central square. So far so good. e4, e5. Your opponent also wants to fight for the center, and now he is fighting for the d4 square. So how can I develop a piece to attack my opponent's pawn? Yes, I can play a move like knight to f3. And again, your opponent is following the opening principles. uh, so since his pawn was attacked, he played a move like knight to c6 to not only develop his piece but protect the pawn. So let's say I want to develop my bishop wherein it controls the center and its diagonal. I would develop it to bishop c4. So this is what I did in my game, and now I fulfilled principle number 2, which is to develop the pieces. Remember, developing your pieces is important. Well, you have put into practice the first two principles, but one is missing. First one was to develop central squares. The other one was to like kind of yeah, develop your pieces, then control the central squares. And the third one was to like with regards to taking your king away from the center or king safety, so you castle. Okay, cool. So great job. These three principles are probably the most important of all, since all others are based on them. So as long as you put these three principles into practice, you will have a good opening game. Also remember to develop these other pieces like the minor pieces, which are the knights and the bishops. Alright, so here's the thing. Principle number 4 is do not move your queen early in the opening. Yes, the queen is the most powerful piece in chess, but it is for this very important reason that it is not good to make a move with it in the opening. Since another piece of less value can attack it, and it will be forced to move again. So your opponent has developed the queen in the first moves, in the first few moves. How can you attack it with one of your pieces? Okay, perfect, right? Knight c3. So now the queen has to move. Alright, the queen just moved to d4. How can you attack it one more time? Knight to f3. Awesome. Now the queen went to f4. So what can you do to open up your position and develop something and also attack the queen? Oops, not d3, it is d4. Alright, that was a mouse slip though. Okay, the queen goes over here. Now it's time to again attack the queen. Let's say h3. Right, so you have made so many moves and the queen is just rotating and revolving. So now how will you develop the queen? I would say knight e5 is one good move, or probably bishop d3 is one good move, but it would lead to a loss of a pawn. So knight e5, perfect, right? That's about it, and great job. So you have developed your pieces and have controlled the center while your opponent has not decided to do any of that. He only violates this principle, so to move the queen in the opening, so as to move the queen in the opening. So this is a sample of why you should not move the queen in the opening. Also, one more principle is principle number 5, that is, do not move too many pawns in the opening. Use your pawns to fight for the center, but it is not good to use them unnecessarily. Instead, you must develop your pieces. So let's look at an example of why you shouldn't make a lot of moves with your pawn. Let's start with our usual e4, e6. This is the French defense. So d4 comes d6. Now what do you play in this position as white? Yes, to develop your pieces. And of course they're just moving their pawns, so we just keep on developing. Again, they're just moving their pawns, so we keep on developing. And again, they're just moving their pawns, so we keep on developing. So what should we play in this position? Of course we should castle. So maybe it's a bit of an exaggeration on my part, but it's enough to show you that you shouldn't move so many pawns in the opening. You have a great development while your opponent has not developed any of the pieces. Remember to always make the necessary pawn movements to control the center. Alright, so far so good. So let's go to principle number 6, that is, do not move the same piece in the opening multiple times. You should try to make a movement with each different piece, since if you focus on moving the same piece, you will not get a good development and you will be against the opening principles. So your opponent just developed the knight. How can you make this knight have to move again? Yes, you play the move e5 and then probably the knight will move. So let's say we just control the center. How can you make the knight move again? c3, perfect, right? So awesome. How can you make the knight move again? Or probably not, because look at that beautiful pawn chain that you have. Now you can start developing your pieces, like playing moves like knight f3, or for that matter bishop c4, right? Okay, so perfect. So principle number 7 is bring your pieces to the center. This principle is very close to principle number 2. Develop your pieces, or you know that you must develop your pieces, but you think where. Here is the answer: you should develop it towards the center. Whenever you can, try to move your pieces towards the center of the board to have a better control of the central squares, as white pieces do in this position of the queen's gambit. Alright, see, all these pieces have their focus towards the central squares, or towards the center of the board. Even the pawns do control the center. Alright, do not give up on the bishop pair on the first moves. The two bishops together can be powerful, as can control a large number of they can control a large number of squares. But if one bishop disappears from the board, the other will no longer be as strong. So you should not give up the bishop pair in the opening. Rather, you should use this to have a better game. We are in a position of the royal opus opening. Your opponent attacks your bishop, which you should not surrender. So the best thing here is to withdraw your bishop or retreat your bishop to a4. But just to continue talking about this principle, I ask you to capture the knight, right? So let's say bishop a4 is the correct move, but let's say if I capture the knight, then yes, your opponent's pawn structure is damaged, but we have lost a bishop pair in the opening. So never do that. And principle number 9 is open the position according to your development. There are many players who do not know this. If this is your calm case, I will explain it to you. When you have a good development of your pieces, a good idea is to look for a pawn move that helps to open columns and diagonals. But if you are behind in development, then you should try to maintain a closed position. Again, this is the royal opus. You have two pieces developed while your opponent has only one. So you have a better development, and you must open up the position in order to take advantage of it. How can you move or open up the position by moving one of your pawns? Yes, the answer is just open up on the center, as the knight cannot capture it because the bishop pins it. So the correct move is indeed d4. Very nice. So this is what you should do when you have a good development. But remember, if you are behind in development, stay in a closed position. Alright, and the last one is to connect your towers or connect your rooks. Once you have developed all your pieces, as in this position, you should try to connect your rooks. So this is such so that they can help each other and have a better communication in your games. So to do this, you must move your queen to the second file and seventh file if you're playing with the black pieces. So yes, queen c2 and your rooks are connected. So normally this happens uh, when this happens, it is a sign that your opening is over, and that is when the real game or the middle game begins, where whoever had a better start, if you follow the 10 principles that I just showed you, you will always have a better game. So this is the conclusion. Thanks for being in the final stage of the study. I hope you liked this study, and remember to follow the 10 opening principles in your games to play the opening like a chess GM. Thank you so much for watching this, and you can always take a look at the contact number of the academy, at the coach, and also I will put the website description of the academy in the chat. Thank you.